The Ladina, the Linoleum Ripper, Hitler's buzzsaw. The MG42 was the bane of the Allies' existence throughout the second half of the Second World War. Used extensively by the German Wehrmacht and SS, this air-cooled, recoil-operated general-purpose machine gun struck fear into all those with the misfortune to find themselves in its sights. Such was its effect on the psyche of the Allied forces that the American War Department created a training film to combat the weapon's psychological effect on soldiers. Dependable and downright terrifying, this wartime icon became one of the most effective firearms developed in the mid-20th century. With a weight of 25.5 pounds and a length of 48 inches, this colossus of a machine gun dispenses 7.92 by 57 Mauser at rates of up to 1,200 rounds per minute. Effective at up to 2,000 meters, with rounds traveling at upwards of 700 meters per second, this German design's notoriety is well deserved. The century leading up to the MG42's introduction would see dramatic technological progress in the field of weapons development, especially with automatic machine guns. First produced in 1884, Hiram Maxim's Maxim machine gun was the first automatic, or self-loading, machine gun design, and its implementation on the battlefield would drastically change the way wars were fought. Fielded in large numbers by the German Empire during the colonial wars in the late 19th century, the Maxim gun proved to be incredibly effective at suppressing enemies, with the Germans improving upon the design with the MG08 in 1908. Further proof of concept would come in 1914, with the outbreak of World War I, the German army, along with the other belligerent nations, putting machine guns to the test, such as the British Lewis gun, French Chauchat, and later American Browning automatic rifle. By the end of the war, machine guns were firmly cemented as a critical component of any nation's arsenal if they wanted to be militarily competitive on a global scale. The Germans, being defeated in 1918, were restricted from manufacturing machine guns, and prohibited from developing any new automatic weapons due to the Treaty of Versailles, but many in Germany felt this was unfair, and soon would begin defying the treaty. With Hitler's rise to power in the 1930s, Germany sought to remilitarize, and began experimenting with the concept of an Einheitsmaschinengewehr, or universal machine gun, to replace the role-specific machine guns they had in service at the time. This new type of weapon was to be lightweight, with a simple operation, able to swap barrels quickly with single-shot capability, along with two cyclic rates, one very fast and the other slower, and in 1934, the MG34 would be produced to these specifications. This design proved effective, capable of portable light and medium machine gun infantry cover, low-level anti-aircraft coverage, and even had sniping ability. But the new machine gun wasn't reliable enough, being sensitive to bad weather, dirt, and mud, along with having an overly complex design, requiring a lot of highly skilled labor to mass produce, as well as being expensive. A new Einheitsmaschinengewehr was needed, and Werner Gruner found himself tasked with creating it. Part of one of three companies competing to design a replacement for the MG34, Gruner and his team had no experience producing firearms. In fact, their company's staple product was sheet metal lanterns, but they were experienced in mass production, something critical for the task they were given. After attending an army machine gunner course to familiarize himself with their utility and characteristics, along with seeking input from soldiers, Gruner put together a recoil-operated roller-locked weapon, made mostly from stamped and pressed steel, with only the critical components being elaborately milled, using riveting and spot welding to connect it all together, cutting down on the materials and machining required to build it. Introduced as the MG39 in 1939, this new design took half the time and resources to make as an MG34, along with costing 25% less, while maintaining the compatibility with MG34 mounts and accessories, with the only real differences from the gunner's perspective being the change from saddle drum magazines to belted ammunition, and the simplification of the sights. Further trials of the weapon continued into 1940, and by 1941 it had completed combat trials and was ready for mass production. Several German firearms manufacturers were contracted to begin producing the newly named MG42 in 1942, first fielded by the Deutsches Afrika Korps, or German Afrika Korps, in May 1942, and making its way into the hands of German soldiers on all fronts by the summer. It would surpass the MG34 in numbers produced the next year, with over 400,000 models produced by the end of the war. As the war neared its end, a new variant of the MG42 would emerge, this being the MG42V, designed in 1944. Created due to material shortages in Germany making production of the MG42 difficult, it utilized a roller-delayed blowback mechanism and was tested in 1944, set for production as the MG45, but only 10 were ever actually built. Despite this, the MG42V has monumental importance, its operation being employed in a number of important post-war designs, such as the G3 and MP5. After the Third Reich collapsed, the MG42 design was reborn in 1958 as the MG3, rechambered in 7.62 by 51mm NATO, but retaining interchangeability with MG42 parts. The only other direct descendant of the MG42 is the MG74, with a heavier bolt, reduced rate of fire, single shot capability, and polymer stock and handguard. Other variants of the MG42 do exist, notably the Swiss MG51 and Yugoslavian Zastava M53, but were mainly just copies and derivatives of the MG42 under different names, along with the Spanish Setme Amelie, a 5.56 chambered LMG with a similar look to the MG42, but more functionally comparable to the MG45. To understand the impact the MG42 had on the battlefield, it's imperative to understand how German infantry squads functioned in World War II. German squads were comprised of 6 to 10 men, a squad leader equipped with an SMG, often an MP40, a deputy squad leader, and a varying number of riflemen equipped with either Kar-98Ks, Gewehr 43s, or, later in the war, STG 44s, and a 3-man machine gun team, 1 gunner, 1 loader, and 1 ammunition carrier. The essential strategy of these squads was to use the riflemen to flush the enemy into the suppressive fire of the machine gun, in order to halt their advancements and crush them under the fire superiority of the MG42, and the Germans were incredibly effective at carrying this out. The only practical counter to this for the Allies was to destroy the machine gun nest with a tank, but if tank support was unavailable, they'd have to wait for either a barrel change or for their ammunition to run dry before being able to attack. This tactic of simply overwhelming the enemy with a constant hail of bullets has defined the design of machine guns ever since. Post-war designs such as the M60, FN MAG, and M249 SAW being created to offer sustained heavy automatic fire, but during the Second World War, this concept was groundbreaking and reflected a shift from individual marksmanship to volume of fire deciding a battle's outcome. Similar to the STG-44, the MG-42 lived on after the downfall of Germany in World War II, it and its variants finding its way into the hands of various insurgent forces, reportedly remaining in use to this day. American-captured MG-42s would be part of their attempts to replace their aging M1918 bar, rechambered for the 30-06 cartridge and designated the T-24, but this prototype would be abandoned following a series of failed tests, the new chambering proving to be too long for the gun's operation to work reliably, though the MG-42 would be a key design influence for the future M60, the pinnacle of wartime engineering, a beast of a weapon, and a recurring nightmare for those that faced it. The MG-42 is a 20th century icon, its very nature making it one of the most infamous firearms of World War II.